Well, here on the East Coast last night, thousands of Comcast subscribers lost their internet service. Comcast says it fixed the problem by early this morning, but it threw a scare into those who had hoped to shop online this Cyber Monday, and it wasn't good PR for the cable TV industry, which has been losing customers to companies such as Hulu and iTunes. Joining us now for a broader picture of what's happening within the industry is Craig Moffett of Sanford Bernstein. He's one of the top-ranked analysts for cable and satellite TV companies, and it feels like these days you can't just talk about TV. You got to talk about the pipes, you've got to talk about the internet and all of it coming together here. Quickly, with this outage that we saw last night, how much of a kink is it to have it at this time?
Well, it's bad publicity, but that's really all it is. But, you know, it really highlights something very important, which is internet service has become just as important as as television service for what customers need and what customers want, not just this time of year, but all the time. And it highlights that the cable companies aren't TV companies anymore. They're infrastructure providers, and part of that infrastructure is broadband service.
So you have an outage, and that's truly hurtful PR. Talk to me, because I was reading through your research, and I see that one of the statistics that jumped out, wireless traffic is up 50% in the past year. And this is part of that structural change, it sounds like, with consumers using the internet in different ways than they had in the past.
That's right. In fact, that's total wireless traffic up 50% in the last year. AT&T disclosed recently that wireless data traffic with smartphones and the like is up 3,000% over the last 3 years. So you've had this massive increase in the way people are using the wireless network.
And one beneficiary of that has been Netflix. It's now the biggest source of streaming web traffic in North America during peak evening hours. Are they really getting that much traffic?
They are. In fact, total internet traffic is more than a quarter of all traffic. In fact, it's now about 40% of all the traffic on the web, total video traffic, streaming video. And by far the largest component of that is Netflix, with about 21% of all traffic and about a quarter of all traffic at prime time. So a huge portion is people watching video.
So if they're where the consumer is going, talk to me about how more the traditional cable companies are surviving in this, because you would assume that that's eating into their viewership.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I think the first thing to bear in mind is that, remember what I said before, the cable companies aren't video companies, they're infrastructure providers. It's coming in over their infrastructure, whether it's being charged for as video or whether it's being charged for as broadband. And I think you can expect a transition over time from more expensive video to more expensive broadband, because at the end of the day, you have to pay for the infrastructure, you have to pay for the pipes, and the cable companies will earn a return. But I think it's also important to remember that what we're seeing now in terms of cord cutting is a very small phenomenon. It gets a ton of press.
Cord cutting meaning people opting out of their cable packages.
That's right. It gets a ton of publicity. The press loves to write about it. But the evidence that it's going on is barely there. It's much more anecdotal than actual.
Because I had read that cable subscriptions fell for the first time, really.
Well, cable subscriptions have been falling. Pay TV subscriptions overall fell for the first time in the last 2 quarters. But there's a lot more behind that. It really looks like what we're seeing is a problem at the low end. We're seeing poor people cutting the cord and going back to watching television via rabbit ears and rooftop antennas. We don't see any real evidence that people are cutting the cord yet and switching to video. Switching to video on the internet. That's what everybody's afraid of, and that's what everybody's watching. So when people see the data saying that Netflix is going through the roof, they're assuming, well, this is the end of cable. It doesn't look that way yet. It's certainly something to watch, but right now it looks like those people are using video over the internet as a supplement to rather than a replacement for traditional linear video.
And in some ways, though, cable companies are striking back, though, in how they put together the packages they make available.
That's right, and I think you're going to see a number of what I would refer to as feedback loops that restrain this process over time. One is that the content companies haven't found a way to make money on the net yet. They make money as long as it's perceived to be incremental, but as soon as it becomes a substitute for their traditional model, which is advertising and affiliate fee-based, it's pennies on the dollar, and they start to withhold content. The second thing you're likely to see is the cable companies will start to charge more to use more.
Yeah.
The top 10% of internet users in the United States use about 60% of all the traffic. Those 10% of people are going to use more, and those are the 10% of people that are watching video over the web. So you start to see it become less economically attractive to bypass the traditional model.
So start watching the clock as you're online, because soon you're going to be charged for that. That's scary. because we assume it's like a utility right now.
Well, but in fact, a utility, when you turn on, you leave your air conditioner on a hot day, you pay more.
All right. Thank you so much, Craig, for coming on.
My pleasure.